basics and how it all works. So I'll go ahead and start a screen share. Okay. Can someone put in the Q&A whether they can see the Xero just before I carry on? Just want to make sure everyone can see Xero. Okay, so Xero. First thing you're seeing is the home page here, which is your dashboard. And this is where you can see, this is just a demo account, but this is sort of where you can see the highlights of your Xero, your bank account. You can choose sort of category codes to watch. You can see a snapshot of if anyone owes you money and people you owe money to. But we'll go into sort of the main features as we go through. What I wanted to start on was to just do the basics of setting up your Xero when you first join Xero. So when you first start, this would all be blank, and you'd have to add bank accounts and sort of add in your own invoices and things. But the first thing to do is always get your settings set up first. So we'll always go through our organizational details, and then you put in your company name. You can add your logo of your business in, so that comes through onto invoices and things that you send out. Put in your company details if you're a limited company. If you're not, a sole trader or not-for-profit partnership, you can choose whichever one's relevant to you. And your contact details, again, this comes through onto invoicing and things, so it's good to make sure this is all set up and correct. And any other additional information you want to give your customers all goes through onto there. Next area of settings is worth looking at is users. Xero is great because you can have unlimited users, so you can have unlimited people, and if you've got different areas of the business where you didn't want certain people to see certain things, you can put restrictions on that as well. Invoice settings. So next thing, so to get that set up, you can add in your company logo here. If you're happy with the Xero standard template, that's great. You can just put your logo in and you're up and running. If you wanted to change something and have a bespoke invoice, you can do that via this section here, which is custom invoicing. Again, you can put your logo in, but you can download the templates and play around with them yourself and make them look as you like them, really. Next part to look at, if we go back into settings, is to mention payment services. In payment services, we can add things like PayPal, go cardless, which is the main good one. Stripe as well is another good one. Stripe's a cheaper version of PayPal, not quite as secure, but it works for certain businesses. Allows you to take telephone payments as well if you don't have a card machine, so it's a good one to consider. But go cardless is a great one if you have recurring invoices. We use it ourselves, so you send out, if you do monthly fees, you can send out a recurring invoices and then automatically be collected by direct debit. So that's a real good area to look at. Going back to settings, next section is email settings. So in Xero, a lot of things you can send to your customers via email, and in here is where you can set how you want your emails to be worded. So if you're sending out, say, a sales invoice, the most common ones, the bits in brackets are the bits that are driven by Xero. So you can change anything which isn't in brackets to read how you'd like it to read. So it's a good little thing to do if you wanted to put your own way you want to word things. And then going back through our settings. Other settings on this page, we won't go into too much detail now. Xero to Xero is a handy one. If you know people you're working with use Xero as well, you can ask them for their Xero code, and then any invoices you raise to each other will automatically come into your own Xeros. Going into advanced settings, one of the main things to get set up at the start, which obviously if you use us, we can help you with, is financial settings, just to make sure you got your right year end. If you're VAT registered, make sure you're on the right scheme. And if you're VAT registered, you'll need to have your VAT number in here so it comes up on your invoices. And if you're in the construction industry scheme, Xero is absolutely brilliant for the construction industry. You can get this set up and it will deal with all your monthly returns and anything that you do in the construction industry scheme. It is going to be an extra payment. Now they've just set up an extra payment for that. I think it's £5 a month, but it can save, if you've got a few subcontractors, it can save absolutely hours of time. It's absolutely a great little system, construction industry scheme on Xero. The other settings in advanced settings, we won't go into too much detail now because they're sort of more advanced settings. You can set up your fixed assets to have a fixed asset register. You can set up tracking categories if you've got different areas of your business you want to report on. And the other parts, I won't go into too much detail now. So that's sort of the main settings done with. If anyone's got any questions on the settings, whack them in the Q&A, but if not, I'll move on. We'll move on to the products and services section. Look at starting to do our most important part, sales. So in this section is if you have and sell stock, you can add your stock lines into here and add your cost prices. So this demo company sell golf balls. So they've got their stock line set up, and then when they raise a quote or an invoice, they can just select that stock code and the details will come into the invoice. For people who sell services, what you can do is set up an item, and because it's a service, you don't purchase it in. So you would just untick that one and we give it a code name. So if we do an Easter one, seems like we're nearly there. If we do an Easter egg, and then we can say we're going to sell this, put the price in 50, sales. This is your code for your accounting. So you can set up as many codes as you like. If we just default to sales for now, and then the description comes in as Easter egg. Tracked items is when it's something that you buy in to sell. So for this one, we're just going to say that we've not bought it in, just for ease. But if you do want to control stock, that's how you do it. But we won't go into too much detail into that. Just do a basic item setup for now. So that's come in. We're selling an Easter egg for £50, and you can set up as many of these as you like. If you had an Excel list, you can import it in. But that's the basics of products. It's good if you sell services as well. So if we do a quick services one, if we say the accounts, so we can do sales, and then that one's ready. So if you wanted to raise an invoice for that, you can get that out. That's the basics of product section, and it can save a lot of time when you're doing your invoicing to have your items set up ready to invoice. Next section we'll have a look at is if you're sending out a quote. So if you quote for your services, best thing to do is use the quoting system. Great little system. It tracks all your quotes. So once you've raised a quote, puts it into each section. If we just do a basic quote, so yeah, we can do 1, 2, 3 blocks for today. We can give it an expiry date, say 1 week. Automatically generates a number in sequential. So say we want to sell our Easter egg that we've just set up, and Joe wants 9 of those. That, so go down to 7. So there we go, Joe wants an Easter egg. You can put your terms and conditions in here, and then you can send that off to your customer. You can also do this on the phone app, which is great if you're out and about quoting. You can get those all in, and then it sends out a simple email. What I'll do is I'll pop this one off to myself and we can go through the whole process of a quote exception. So that one has gone over to me into my emails. So now if we go back to our quote screen, we can see that that has now been moved into the sent quotes. So that you can see, keep a list of that. So what that does is it pops an email over to your customer and then they get a choice to either accept or decline the quote. If someone rings you up on the phone and says, oh, that quote's great, let's go ahead, you can accept it manually or decline it if they don't want to do it, or revise it if they want some changes. And then say they want to make some changes, you can revise it and add in some more lines. Say they wanted more services, just add in some more lines and then update. It's perfect. So if we go back to the sent quote screen, go back into our quote, we can accept that quote. Brilliant. So then that one moves over to our accepted quote screen. So that gives you a sort of a screen to go to for work to do in effect. That's your accepted quotes. You can sort of put that into your planners and track your work in. So when the work's all done, we now want to make this into an invoice. So it is as simple as pressing the button create invoice. Mark it as invoiced, create. Brilliant. So at this point, perhaps when you were on doing the work or whatever, or they rang up, said they wanted something extra. So this one here, they decided they wanted to add a unicorn in, and then they get one. And then we can add in an amount for that. So, and we're happy with that. Oh, sorry, just add your due date in, give them a week to pay, approve that one. So that one's now an approved email, and then we pop that email off to the customer, asking them to pay us. We'd send that one off. Or you can print the PDF. It will bring up your invoice on screen and you can manually print it and send it if you want to. However you want to work really on the sales invoices side of things. Question from Amanda about quotes. So quotes was in business and then quotes. That's how you get your quote section. So that invoice is now done and it will go into your invoices screen, which is a list of all your invoices. So you can see which ones are awaiting payment. The sent ones, you can see our one to Joe blogs has come in there. And then if someone had raised some draft, you can raise them as draft and send. And then the next part is if you've got a situation where you haven't done a quote and you just want to send someone an invoice from scratch, you just use the new invoice button here. And it's exactly the same as doing a quote. So you just fill in all the details, approve it, and then you can email it off. So there's that's the sort of gist of invoicing. The other parts of invoicing that we'll look at is the repeating invoicing, which is a great function in Xero. So this is for any invoices where you do monthly services. So if you do the same thing every month for somebody, you don't want to be raising a manual invoice every month to remember to do that. You just set up a repeating invoice, and then very similar screen as you'll see from the other screen. You can fill in all your details and then send in the date. One tip is, if you're sending your first one, you always want to date the first invoice the day after you're doing it. So you'd want to date it the 10th, and then it'll automatically send by email tomorrow. Online payments I mentioned earlier. So if you're using Xero, a great system for recurring invoices is Go Cardless. You can add Go Cardless as a additional app onto Xero, and then you send someone a repeating invoice. They get a link to click on there. They can click Pay Now, and that sets up a direct debit to pay this invoice and any more invoices that you raise on Xero. So that works really well. It does come as a cost though, unfortunately. So that's the downside for the time saving. But if you have a lot of repeating invoices that you don't want to track that everyone's paid, that's the other part of Go Cardless, which is brilliant. Gives you warnings if somebody doesn't pay the direct debit or cancels the direct debit, so you know straight away if you're not going to get paid for that month's invoice. So that's the main part of invoicing. Another great function on invoicing, just to point out, is if we go back to the waiting payment page, you can see here we've got invoice reminders. So you can actually set up on Xero reminders to send to your customers at certain intervals when the invoices are overdue. So the only thing to make sure about this is that you're really on top of your Xero, because you wouldn't want a customer getting an email to remind them that their invoice hasn't been paid if they have paid you. So it just means we always advise people to try and do their bookkeeping daily anyway. So it shouldn't be a problem if you're on top of your bookkeeping. But you can see here, you can invoice your customers and you can change these defaults just to send emailed reminders to them that they owe you some money, which is a nice little function. So if anyone's got any questions on that section, pop them in the Q&A and we can go through them. But that is pretty much getting all your sales invoices done and out to customers. A handy report to use for your sort of looking at who owes you some money at a glance is your age receivable summary in accounting. If you go into that one, it gives you a summary position of your debtors and who owes you money. So you can see here our Joe Blogs invoice is showing up and it's in the current section. So you would probably run this report however regularly you wanted to, and as people start slipping into sort of 1 month old, or if even older and older, then you know you're starting to want to really push them to get a payment in. So that is pretty much the sales side of things on Xero overviewed. So we'll move on to the purchases side. I'll just briefly touch on the first thing, which is purchase orders. So some of you may have businesses where you raise a purchase order first to a supplier or for your staff to be able to go and buy some equipment or supplies to do jobs. So this works in a very similar way to the quoting screen, where you can raise a purchase order and then that can run through and you can create an invoice from there. As purchase orders aren't that commonly used in smaller businesses, I won't go into this in too much detail, but just to let you know it's there if you need it. And then the next section, see, after you've done your sales, is everyone has expenses. And what we recommend you use for getting your expense invoices into Xero is a program called Receipt Bank. And I've just done a video, so I'll just bring this one in, and hopefully someone can someone put in the Q&A box that they can see the video. Okay. Oh, that's not a great start, is it? Let's find the video again. Okay. Can everyone see that screen of my mobile phone? Great, thanks guys. Okay, so this is Receipt Bank. This is me doing a quick picture on my mobile phone. So it's an app on your phone. It's the quickest way to use it. It's one of a few ways, but I'll go into the other ways first. But if I just quickly play this along, so you just get the app up on your phone, and then it comes you to, this is the home page of the app. And then you can press your camera phone and it comes up on your phone. So you see here we've got a Tesco invoice that we're just going to snap. And just going through the modes on the bottom, you can see there we've got multiple and combine. So combine is where you've got an invoice with more than one page, and multiple is if you are a bit behind and you want to snap, say, 5 or 6 invoices that you've got ready to snap all at once. This one is just one invoice, so we're just going to use single mode, and we'll take the picture and then submit for processing, which sends it into Receipt Bank to process. And then a few minutes later, that will be ready to look at. So that is a quick using the phone app on Receipt Bank. And if I go now into Receipt Bank, this is the web module of Receipt Bank. And you can see here's one I prepared earlier. This is ready to look at. You can do what I'm doing here, you can do in the app as well. But just for the demo purposes, I'll just do this manually. You can see it comes into Receipt Bank. You've got the picture of the invoice that's saved forever in the cloud. So you can bin that invoice and go paperless, which is one of the benefits of Receipt Bank. Over in this section, you can see Receipt Bank have pulled off the main details from the invoice. So they can see it's from Tesco, the date of the invoice, the total amount. They've extracted the tax. So if you're VAT registered, you'd need to extract the tax. So it's done that for you. All you've got to do the first time you do one of these is put a category on it. So motor vehicle expenses. And I always like to put a brief description for everything so that that comes up in your Xero. So when you're happy with that, you submit publish, and that sends it into Xero for you. Other modes of sending stuff from Receipt Bank are by email. So if you get sent an emailed invoice with PDF, you click forward, type in your specific Receipt Bank email address, and that will put it into Receipt Bank like you've seen here. It will come in ready to analyze. Other ways is Receipt Bank can actually directly link with some of your supplier accounts, some of the main suppliers, Amazon, things like that. And if you buy something into Amazon, it will bring the invoice into Receipt Bank ready for you. Other ways are if you've got some files in your computer, you can drag and drop your files into Receipt Bank and it will process them. There's a few ways to use it. Quickest way we always find is the phone app. If you've got invoices in front of you, snap them on your phone and it comes in nice and quick. What Receipt Bank also does is it can memory what you've done before. So next time you put in a Tesco one that's similar, it will likely suggest to you that it's for motor vehicles. And if you're happy with it, you can actually publish from this screen. So it saves a bit of time. Yeah, Andy's put in the comments. This is you can manually do what Receipt Bank does in Xero, but it doesn't work as well. And the downside of putting your receipts into Xero is if you ever want to leave Xero, you can't actually get those receipts off it. So we always recommend using Receipt Bank because they're all stored in Receipt Bank forever and you've always got access to them. So you need that record for 6 years for HMRC. So that's why we recommend using Receipt Bank, and we offer it for free for all our clients. So it's at no cost for anyone that works with us. And if anyone's on there that wants to get set up, just pop me an email and we can get you set up on it. Going back to Xero then, so once you've done your Receipt Bank, it comes into Bills to Pay section in a draft. So we can see here we've got our draft here that's come in, that we've just sent over, which comes in, and if we're happy with it, we just approve it. And then that's gone in now as a bill to pay. So that is the Receipt Bank way of doing bills, and if you've got a lot of expenses, it saves a lot of time over the period you use it. The other way of putting your bills in to pay is similar way to you raise an invoice, but you go to bills to pay. So we go to bills to pay, and you can create a new bill. And if we are buying something from, say, B&Q, if you've not used B&Q before, it'll create a new contact for you. So it's today's date, due date. Reference, you can put sort of an invoice number if they've put one on there. Description, so we bought a drill, £50, and it's write that off to repairs because it's under £100, and we say it's got some VAT on it, and then that's raising a bill manually. But as you can imagine, if you've got a pile of invoices and you've got to type it all out for all of them, it can become quite time consuming. So, but that's doing a manual bill to pay. And then the downside of doing it manually is, of course, you haven't got your invoice attached. If you wanted to put an attachment on it now, you'd have to, you can email Xero directly, or you can drag and drop or upload add from your files or upload a file. But just that's the warning of, if you do it that way, it's not saved forever, because if you leave Xero for any reason, then you can't extract all your images. So that's doing it manually, getting your bills on. If you're on CIS, if you raised an invoice from a subby that had to be tax deducted, it's all code driven. So you put CIS labour, for instance, in account, and it automatically deducts the tax off, which is the good CIS system part of it. So that's the sort of the basic starts of your bookkeeping. You put your sales invoices on, and as you go along, obviously daily. You put all your expenses on as you go along. Similar to, you can view who owes you money. You can view who you owe money to by going to your aged payable summary in reports. And here, similar screen to what you saw for receivables, you see who you owe money to, so you can keep track of your creditors and who you're due to pay. So then, once you've done your sales and your expenses, the next part of the bookkeeping process is your bank reconciliation. So I'll just check if there's any questions before I move on, actually. Amanda's asked about 50 invoices from a supplier. What you'd probably do there, Amanda, if you've got, if they're all one invoice, you'd use multiple, and then each one would be its own invoice. Or if it was 50 pages, then you'd use combine, or ask them to email it to you, and you can just forward the email into receipt bank. Great. So I think that's all the questions on that. So we'll go on to the bank. So looking at the bank, Xero links automatically with your bank accounts through open banking now. Pretty much all bank accounts are covered. Just had a change in bank rules. So when you first go to Xero, this will say add bank account. What it does is it takes you through a wizard and you connect to your online banking. So you need to have online banking set up. And it automatically brings in every transaction from your bank statements. Every 90 days, you have to re-input and reconnect to your online banking, but it gives you a warning that that needs to be done. So that's the great thing about Xero, is no manual typing of bank information, which if you ever did bookkeeping in the past, you'll know that used to be very time consuming. So this demo company is showing that we've got 4 items here, which we need to take action with in Xero and tell Xero what to do with them. So we can click our reconcile button, and here we go. So this is the other great thing about Xero, is it's got its own sort of inbuilt intelligence. So our Tesco bill that we just created through Receipt Bank, Xero can see that a payment for that invoice is coming to the bank, and it's suggesting to us, that's why it's gone green, it's suggesting to us, is this payment to pay this Tesco invoice? And of course it is. So if we're happy to do that, we just press OK, and then that clears it down. Next line is the bank charges. I'll come back to that one in a minute. But you can see as well for our sales that we made. So our sales to Joe Bloggs has paid us £500, and Xero is suggesting, is that to pay our invoice that we've raised to Joe Bloggs? And again, we know it is, so we can press OK and clear that one off. So that is the simple matching of Xero. And if everything matches up, it's happy days. You can just go down your list. OK, OK, OK. That's reconciling your bank. And at the same time, it marks the invoice as paid. So if we just quickly go back into our invoices section and look at that Joe Bloggs invoice, we can now see that Joe Bloggs is now marked as paid, and it's not on our awaiting payment list anymore. The same way that the Tesco bill to pay, if we just search for that one, So we can see our Tesco one is paid. Same. So going back to our bank, we've now got a couple of transactions to sort in Xero. So next thing I wanted to show you guys was we can do in Xero is another great automation function of Xero is bank rules. So what you can do for things which happen all the time and you won't have an invoice for, and we've got two examples here actually. So we've got bank charges and we've got our DVLA license monthly fee. So what you can do for those is, because you don't get an invoice and you're not going to put an invoice on to match it up. So what you can do for this type of transaction is create a bank rule. So in here, we can set the rules for Xero. So what we're saying here is, if the payee equals bank charges, we're going to tell Xero what to do for it. So we just have to set a contact. So we can just say we're using Barclays. We set that as a contact. In the description, we'll put bank charges. In the account, we put where we want it to send in Xero. So the bank fees. There's no VAT on bank charges. And then this is the rule title, so bank rules. Now up here, what you can do is if you have bank charges where it might change the reference every month, what you'll want to switch this to, instead of saying equals, you'll want to change it, because basically that means the exact wording has to be on the bank line for it to pick it up. So a good one to say is contains, and then if it contains bank charges in the reference, it will pick it up still. And if you wanted to have multiple conditions, you can add a condition to say contains bank charges and equals an amount. Or if it was say hire purchase agreements and you had multiple hire purchase agreements, you could set up different rules for each amount for each hire purchase agreement and things like that. And then if you have sort of multiple lines and you want it to be pick up, if either of the rules apply, you can press any. So if we save that one, what should happen is now you see Xero is saying, do you want me to apply the bank rule for bank charges? So each time now bank charges come up on the bank statement, this rule should get picked up, and then you can just press OK, and that is it done. That's all you have to do. And we can do the same for DVLA. We can set up a bank rule. But before I do that, I'm just going to quickly show you another couple methods of doing things. So if, say, DVLA was a one-off and you didn't want to do a bank rule, in the create box here, you can do a shortcut, and instead of creating a bill and having to match an invoice, which is just time consuming, in your bank reconciliation screen, we can just create a spend money transaction, which puts the transaction into your accounts. So for this one, it would be motor vehicle expenses, and then you can say just license fee. Then if there's no, that's the way you do your VAT analysis in the bottom box. Region is if you're doing tracking, so we won't go into details on that one. But yeah, so that would be doing a manual spend money transaction. So you just press OK on that. And then that would go into Xero and be done. Before I press OK on that, I'm just going to show you the other sort of areas of the simple bank reconciliation screen. So the next tab along is transfer. So if you've got multiple bank accounts, and this is a transfer between accounts, so if you're putting money into your savings account or transfer money back from your savings account, you press transfer and business savings. Same way works for if you have a credit card. You set your credit card up as a bank and you transfer between the credit card payments. Next box along, discuss, is a great little box for if you're working with an accountant like us. If you've got a query on a bank line and you're not sure what to do with it, you can please Jamie, and then you can save that one, and then you can pop me an email and say, can you have a look at my bank rec? It's a transaction I'm not sure what to do with, and we can log in and help you. And that's a great little one for communication between us. And the last one is find and match. So find and match is used when you've got a payment which might pay multiple invoices. So Xero is not quite good enough to do that for you. So if you've perhaps got a payment that you've paid a statement of a balance, which is to say 10 invoices, this is where you go into it. You have to go find and match, and then you can type in the name of your supplier. So see here, and then you would tick all the invoices that makes up the payment. If the invoices all add up to the payment amount, this reconcile box goes green, and you can click reconcile. And that works the same way if it's a payment from a customer that's paying you for multiple invoices. You do the same thing, find a match, and then match up invoices. From time to time, you're going to get instances where someone might overpay you, underpay you. That's slightly more complicated, so it's probably not for this beginner's webinar. But for an underpayment, you can press split, and you basically do a part payment, and it will part pay that invoice, which is quite a simple one. Overpayments and credit notes and things slightly more complicated, so that will be for another session, or you're welcome to obviously call us up for help if you ever need help on things like that. Okay, so just looking, I've got a couple of questions coming in. Find a match also for additional payments. Yes, Andy, yeah, you can put part payments. So that's what I said, there's the split button there that we just said, that's for part payments. Amanda, what if you have an invoice that you have paid but it's less than the amount and it doesn't match? That would be the split button, Amanda, that we just showed you there. You go to split, and then you can part pay an invoice. Yeah, sure, Amanda, I'll go back to split. So find a match is where you go, and we'll just pretend that we need to part pay the £22.21 we'll say is from Smart Agency, and for some reason they've part paid this £2,000 invoice. So you can go into there and you click the little split button and you put in the part payment amount. So in this case, we're saying the £22.21 is a part payment, and then you press split, and it splits down that invoice into two parts. So the part you're paying and the balance remaining, which stays on the system as a balance still due. So hopefully that answers that one for you. So that's the sort of the main parts of the bank reconciliation. So if I just quickly clear this one off, I'll show you what happens when you've completely finished. So it tells us we've done a great job and our account is reconciled. One useful report to look at while you're doing your bank reconciliations and when you're in Xero is your reconciliation report, this button here. What this gives you is a bank reconciliation, which is basically letting you know what your balance in Xero is. And these transactions are transactions which you've made but haven't come through the bank yet. What you might do is going back to, you might write a check if you still use checks. And what you can do is in your bills to pay, you can go into an invoice which is awaiting payment, like this one, for instance, Dayside Wholesale. And if you've paid by check, you might say we write a check today and send it off. You probably want to mark that as paid in your Xero so you don't pay it again. So you'd say you'd save it out of your bank account, and then you could put the reference in as check 001, and then we can manually add that payment in. So it comes off our payments to pay, but obviously that money hasn't yet come out of the bank. So the way, going back to the screen we were just in, our reconciliation report. So we can see now that payment I've just made has come in on our reconciliation report because the amount is paid in Xero, but it's not yet come out of the bank. When it comes up onto the bank screen, it'll go green to match up, and then it'll come out of this list of unreconciled transactions. What this list can show is when someone might have made a mistake. If, for instance, you put the check in as paid manually, like I've just done, and then when the reconciliation screen comes up, you then decide to put that as a spend money, for instance, and don't clear off this check, then that will be a duplicate, and that's where you might find that you've made mistakes. But in an ideal world, if you're not using checks, you're not paying things in advance, the balance in Xero should always equal your statement balance. If underneath here you get something that says difference, that means you've got a problem and your statement is not agreeing to what's shown in Xero. and then probably best to contact us and we'll try and look into what's happened. So that is the main parts of Xero, and hopefully you can see there that it can save a lot of time compared to manual bookkeeping methods. Using Excel, Sage 50 used to be very popular, but that is now sort of being superseded by these new cloud bookkeeping systems where you got this automation. And the ideal world is in your bank reconciliation screen, your first task would be to clear off all of your ones that match up. So all of those ones that have gone green, you'd clear those first. Next step would be to clear your bank rules. So you clear all them off, and then you should just be left with hopefully only a few transactions which perhaps need you to do a find and match because you're paying multiple invoices, or perhaps it's one-off payments which you need to do a create tab for, or some bank transfers perhaps. So ideally you set up as much automation as you can to sort of reduce the time that you need to spend on your bookkeeping. So that's the bank section covered. If anyone's got any questions that sort of not answered, put them in the Q&A and I'll come back to them. But for now, I will move on to the contact section up here. So this area is where you see all of your contacts, your suppliers, your customers. You might want to add these as you go along. So if you get a new customer, you can add them as a contact, put in their company name. So you can fill all this in, put in their email address, as many details as you want to keep. So it acts as a database for contact details for customers and suppliers as well. Put in their addresses, set up defaults so that if you raise an invoice to them, it'll always default to how you want it to be. And the same from purchases, it saves time on the raising invoices screens. And Xero network keys, if they work on Xero, you can put their network key in. And as I mentioned before, it automatically brings in invoices that you raise between each other. So that's adding a contact. If you're in a CIS, you add you say they're a subcontractor, and you add in their construction industry scheme verification details. That's where you put them in, and then that triggers them to be a CIS customer. In here you can see it tracks everything. So through this screen, say you want to send out some statements to people once a month, just to prompt them on the money they owe you. So here you can use your send statements button. So it gives us what we want to do is switch it to outstanding, and then we want to be default to today's date. Update that, and then it will show who's got money overdue to you and who owes you money. And if you want to just send out statements to everyone, you can just send them all, or perhaps you just want to chase the ones that are overdue, and then you can pop them all an email. And you see we're missing an email there, but get that sent in, and then here's your statement. It'll give them a nice little prompt to get you a payment over. If obviously you're not already using your invoice reminders to send them automated emails, you might want to send monthly statements to give them a prompt that way, or do both, whichever way suits you best, really. And in contacts, you can go into one and sort of view history of your trading with somebody, run reports of activities. If someone says, oh, I think I'm missing an invoice, or our account doesn't tie up to your account, you can send them histories of the accounts, see all the dates people paid, the invoices, histories, and reports are able to be run on things like that as well. So hopefully that's fairly self-explanatory. The other tabs up here you might be asking about. Payroll is an add-on to Xero. It costs £5 a month for the basic 5 employees, and you can run your payroll on there if you ever wanted to do it yourself. So that's a good little one. And projects is another add-on which comes at a cost if you're running projects that you want to report on individually. So yeah, that's a good one if you're sort of doing set projects and you want to be able to report on them specifically, track profit per project, sort of track how far along the job, how you're doing against the budget, things like that. Projects is a fairly substantial add-on, but it works really well. And then sort of the last area we'll have a look at is, I'll just show you some of the reports that are available. We've got a question coming in from Tracy. Does it automatically send a payment receipt? Unfortunately not, Tracy. It doesn't automatically send a payment receipt to customers when you match a payment, but you can, if you like to send remittances, there is a way you can send remittances to people. I can show you that. Our projects, Amanda, I'm not totally sure, to be honest. I think it might be £5, but I'll come back to you on that. I'll make a note to come back to you. The payroll, I'll come back to you on that, Andy, because that's more of a specific question for your circumstances, so I won't put that on a public webinar. So I'll come back to you on your payroll query, Andy. So going back to reports, looking at the different reports, the main ones that you guys might use is with the ones we've gone over. So you've got your age receivables, age payables. There's also detailed versions of that which splits it down. I'll just quickly go into that and show you. So it will break it down per invoice and then per customer. So more of a detailed look, so you can see what the balances are made up of. You can see there all the different invoices that are due for these customers, which is a handy one. Going back to the reports, other handy ones is it can run profit and loss reports, balance sheets like you'll see in your financial accounts. You can do adjustments on it. If you're familiar with bookkeeping, you can do manual journals. Fixed assets is a really good little section where you set up fixed assets, and if you code a transaction to an asset code, it tracks it in your fixed asset section. I'll just quickly show you that actually, as we've got a few minutes to spare on the webinar. Fixed assets, so really good way of keeping track of all the assets you own. If you wanted to, you could sort of give each asset numbers, and you could put barcode trackers, or you can do sort of security tracking on assets. It just gives you a great list of all the assets the company has. When you come to the end of the year, it can run depreciation, or you can run depreciation through the year if you wanted to do management accounts. So that's a nice little system. Once that's set up, if you enter an asset and choose the category assets, you can do that. Another thing worth looking at is the chart of accounts, which is all the codes for Xero. So this is what drives the bookkeeping, all the different codes for categories. So Xero, we have a default code list, all the main expense categories and income, general income, sales, interest, purchases, direct purchases, the main categories. Great thing about this is you can edit it however you like. So if you want to record your expenses on different categories, you can add in categories, you can edit the names of these if you don't like them. You can bespoke this how you like it. If you're used to seeing different categories in your accounts, you can add those in and do it however you like, really. And that's sort of the main overview of Xero, really, for beginners. Another thing I just wanted to point out before we end is, just drag this one in, is just some time-saving apps which add on to Xero. So we've already covered a few. See, we've done Receipt Bank, which is a great little add-on, and really that's how Xero designed is to link with these apps, just to save you time. Go Cardless, we've touched about automatic collection of direct debits. The Xero Me payroll app, if you use payroll and you have employees which are on hourly rates or things like that, and you want to save time of them doing anything manually, they get given an app on their phone. They type in their hours, it gets sent to you to approve. You approve it, and then that's approved to run their payroll based on the hours which are typed in by the employees and approved, which is a great little add-on if you want to run your own payroll, and a good automated way of tracking hours. Soldo is a add-on which is prepaid cards. It's a sort of a modern replacement for petty cash. So you can give employees a debit card, you upload money onto it, so they have a certain amount of funds on there. They spend money out and about. then they get a prompt to take a picture of their invoice. That goes into Saldo, similar screen to what we saw with Receipt Bank, but it's a Saldo screen. That automatically links with Xero and records all of your petty cash expenses. You can control spending, give people responsibility and trust, and you don't have to have cash lying around, so there's no risk of any money going missing or sort of unrecorded, which can happen with petty cash. Someone could go out, not get a receipt, forget to add it into a manual book. Just removes all of that sort of hassle. Does come at a small cost, but it's just, again, another weighing up of the time saving and security aspects over sort of the manual having cash lying around. And Trip Catch is a good one if you do mileage in your business. You track your expenses by mileage, works by GPS, and again links with Xero, puts your mileage claims directly into Xero. There's a few app add-ons that are great for Xero. We're kind of coming to an end there. Hopefully that's given you if we go back to the dashboard now, it might make a bit more sense now we've gone through all of it. You can see your sort of bank highlights, your accounts watch list, invoices over to you, and you can add things to this screen as well. If anyone's got any more questions, we can do them in the Q&A now. Just see if any more come in. Nope. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Well, thanks for listening to me for nearly an hour. Hopefully you've got some useful information off it. And if not, oh, any questions just come in. Oh no, just saying thank you. Great. Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, pop me an email and I can get back to you afterwards. And we can sort of answer any specific questions for your businesses, no problem. You should all have my email from joining the webinar. If not, it's jamie@doorsaccountants.co.uk. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great bank holiday weekend, and no doubt catch up with most of you soon. Thanks, everyone.